Joining our panel right now, Congressman Steve Israel. He is the chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Congressman Israel, thanks so much for being here. You say that you were surprised by how politicized this vote became. I want to play some sound from Tulsi Gabbard. She's a freshman, you know she is, from Hawaii.
She's great.
And this is what she had to say about this vote. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. It's Tammy Duckworth. I apologize. She said
she's also great.
She's also great. It's military families like mine that are the first to bleed when our nation makes this kind of commitment. She opposes the authorization, as does Tulsi Gabbard, the freshman from Hawaii, who also served honorably. Is President Obama hurting his credibility with some Democratic members of the House?
No, I don't think so at all. Look, the president has a strongly held position on this. Many of us agree. Some disagree. What counts now is what emerged at a briefing that we had early this morning in the Democratic caucus, where we focused on where do we go from here, what has to happen with the Russian proposal.
Who was briefing?
It was a Democratic caucus briefing with members of the administration, and it was a classified briefing. I'm not going to talk about what happened in a classified briefing. Sure, whatever.
Just between us?
Yeah. No, that's right, just between us.
Just us girls.
Here's what was important.
And you.
The focus wasn't on the nature of the intel. The focus was on how do we make sure that the Russian proposal is real? How do we make sure that there are meat on the bones?
Yeah.
And so our focus on both sides of the aisle right now, quite honestly, is on ensuring that this is a legitimate, transparent, verifiable proposal. Well, here's how you do it. And I think this is how it unfolds over the next several days. Number one, you send your Secretary of State to sit down with the foreign minister over the next several days and begin to not dot the I's and cross the T's, but we want to see the I's and the T's. Secondly, the United Nations is going to present, the inspectors will present their report, and Congress has a responsibility to digest that. And then we have to make an assessment sometime next week, I believe, as to have we put this proposal in the pressure cooker, and can it withstand the pressure?
And Vladimir Putin writes an op-ed. Is that part of it? I mean, you heard what Senator Menendez said?
That's
well,
the
what
point.
is that?
The point is this. Words don't matter. The words in an op-ed don't matter. Even the words on a proposal that the Russians present to us don't matter. It is the deed that matters. And you have to make sure, I agree with what Ronald Reagan once said, trust but verify. You can trust the words, but you have to verify the deed.
If it's okay, I want to turn back to what Jake was talking about and about the agenda and also just about kind of the state of play of Congress vis-a-vis the president. Jake was talking about spin doctors. We like talking to you because you're definitely not a spin doctor, and you'll give us the truth.
My mother always wanted me to be a doctor, but never a spin doctor.
Of course, you're doing okay. But the idea of the whole, much of the caucus, of your caucus, people who you helped get elected in the last cycle, being against the president. How much of that is because they don't have a relationship with a president of their own party? There's no there. In all candor.
No, I think it has more to do with the concern that many of my colleagues had with intelligence in the prior administration. I think there's a...
This isn't about the president?
No, there is, I think, more than that, is a sense that we've been down this road. And we're dubious when the intelligence community tells us that there are weapons of mass destruction. Been there, done that. And so this administration had has a much higher hurdle.
But it's easier to swallow, and it's easier to clear that hurdle when members of the president's own party have a relationship with him. Fair?
No, I think, quite honestly, the relationship actually should be put aside when you're making decisions on whether to commit force. You have to put those relationships aside. You've got to make a judgment not based on do I like this president, but do I believe the intelligence, and do I believe that his recommendation is the most appropriate course for the national security interests of this country.
But how does it affect everything else, as Dana was talking about? You know, you've got the debt ceiling, the government shutdown, all this other stuff that's really important coming up, and Syria.
And the issue is not whether the President of the United States has expended his political capital. The issue is whether House Republicans are willing to spend any of theirs. This is a group of people who have said that they are willing to shut down the government unless the Affordable Care Act is defunded. This is a group of people that couldn't even pass a bill to provide assistance to families like my constituents who got hurt in Hurricane Sandy. So it's not that the President won't doesn't have any more political capital to spend. It's, does he have anybody who's willing to get stuff done?
But are you at all surprised that he has spent more lobbying effort on this one cause than on any other effort to date since healthcare reform?
No, I'm not, because this is a very significant crisis.
To the American people, this is the most significant crisis that has faced the American people
well,
since healthcare reform?
a decision on whether you should deploy force, even if it's on a standoff capability, is a very serious decision.
But he didn't do it for Libya.
Oh, you know, I've never believed that there's a one-size-fits-all on any kind of national security imperative. And so you have to take each crisis and each situation on its own.
Congressman, I want to ask you about the intelligence. You're saying that members of the House Democratic Caucus, Democratic members of the House, are skeptical of the intelligence. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that they came into this with a high level of skepticism. Let me just speak for myself. I listened to President Bush tell me that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. I was there when he showed me a vial with pink liquid, and he said, this is a precursor to a chemical or biological weapon. To me, it looked like you know, some medicine that you would get at the local drugstore, but the President of the United States said that the intelligence supported that this was dangerous to our country. I actually entered this process far more dubious and far more skeptical about what the intelligence community was saying than I would have had I not gone through the Iraq process. And that actually ended up serving me well, because I questioned it more seriously. I parsed the data in a more significant way and came to the conclusion, having been more dubious, that this was the real deal, that this guy has used chemical weapons, and every time we didn't stop him, he showed the world that he was willing to escalate, amplify, and will do it again.
Option to work, our allies also need to be on board with it.
Correct.
And, you know, today the Gulf Cooperation Council says because of the president's change in policy, the Gulf states feel misled. Le Figaro's headline today is their President Hollande is now forced to manage Obama's retreat. Cameron in England took a humiliating defeat that it now looks like he didn't have to take. Do you think America's allies are now going to be with us after they've gone through all of this, maybe for naught?
I think that the focus over the next week or so with our international partners and with Russia will be whether or not we have a diplomatic solution to this, whether or not we can achieve the key strategic objective of degrading the chemical weapons capacity in Syria through diplomacy, through inspections, through an opening up of the process. And if we can get that done in a verifiable way, all the process arguments and all the arguments about what happened, what didn't happen, who said what, will be irrelevant. You know who studies the process that goes into presidential decisions? Presidential historians. You know what the American people care about? Did you get a result?
Do you think the president, in a way, has boxed himself in? And if these negotiations fall apart, let's just say it falls apart, that now he has to use force, whether he goes to the Congress or not?
And should he go to the Congress?
Yeah.
If
Well,
you were
I-
advising-
One and
Yes.
two.
If you
First?
were
Okay,
advising
so
him,
wait.
would you tell him to
So
go?
has he boxed
Answer to
himself
question
in?
two, yes, he should go.
Answer to question one?
He should continue to
So you want
engage-
all of your members
engage
who want to get
Congress.
reelected?
So wait, will
to
he?
vote on-
Do you
on
think
this?
he's boxed himself in, so now he has to use?
No, I believe he did what most presidents would do. You are managing a crisis. You are managing a very fluid situation. There's a new development that is only a few days old, where the entity, the country that was protecting a chemical weapons capability in Syria now says, okay, we're going to take a different position. We're going to open up the process. We're going to help you verify that these chemical weapons will not be used. Now, it's easy to criticize any president of any party for what he's done, but what would you do? Would you say, given that offer, we're not even interested in exploring it? The president did what we would want him to do. Let's take a look at it, put it in the pressure cooker. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, we're going to consider other alternatives.
Carl Levin of Michigan said that he believes that the message has been muddled. I mean, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but he said that there have just been different messages from different members of the administration. Have you found that that's a problem that you're hearing about when you are in the cloakroom or on the House floor with your colleagues?
I haven't heard my colleagues say that the message has been muddled. I do believe that there's a level of frustration with how fast things are changing. I mean, how would you like to be a White House speechwriter yesterday? So the fact of the matter is, when you have, this is just international politics, when you have a fast changing situation, you want to be able to adapt to it. You don't want to force a position that may no longer be operative because events have overtaken that position. So you want to have flexibility, and you want to use time as an ally. You have to use time as an ally, and that's what's happening now.